So the reason why we're cultivating algae is to make food for feeding our oyster larvae. That process starts with us getting what's called starter cultures from the Milford lab in Connecticut. So we'll get these little vials sent to us, and that's where we begin the inoculation process and getting our algae cultures started. So yeah, the initial process for creating our starter cultures is getting filtered seawater into flasks and sterilizing it. So the first part is making sure everything is super clean, having all your flasks ready. Downstairs we have filtered seawater that comes in, I think, 0.2, 0.1 micron. So it's super filtered. So I have a jug inside the lab, and then I fill up my flasks with filtered salt water. And then I add nutrients. I add what's called F2 media, or F/2 media nutrients. I add silicate, and then to what's called the working cultures, not the bubbling flasks, which I'll get into later. I add Trizz buffer, which is a stabilizing agent and helps keep the pH low, and it makes it so that the flasks, or the algae that's stored in the flasks on the shelf, lasts longer. Once I get all the filtered seawater into the flasks, and I get the F2 media, the silicate, and the Trizz in the flasks, then I autoclave it. So I put it into, there's other ways you can do it. The important thing is to sterilize it. So 121°C for about 30 minutes, maybe even a little longer. It goes in there, sterilizes everything, so then it's ready for the inoculation process. So after the flasks are autoclaved, I let it sit overnight. It gives the pH a chance to stabilize, and as well, of course, cool off. You don't want to inoculate when the water's still almost boiling. I put the filtered seawater in the sterilization chamber with the algae that I want to inoculate. So if I'm getting it right from Milford Labs, I take the tube and I dump a little bit inside the flask. In that process, it's important that everything is super sterile as well. There's positive flow that's coming out of the hood, but you want to spray your hands with alcohol a lot every time you put your hands back in the chamber. And there's a little burner, which has propane, so that way you can have a little burner and you can sterilize the lips of the flask. So just trying to eliminate any bacteria that you might infect. And then you inoculate it, and then you cap it, and bada bing, bada boom, you're good. So in what I call my algae lab, where everything is moving, at the top I have what's called my library stock, and that's the very first thing I inoculated. And it's from there I'll get all my algae going started in these 500 milliliter flasks. And then from there, I'll inoculate down into what I call my working cultures. And those are the ones I'm going to be re-inoculating from over and over again, week to week, into new 500 milliliter flasks, and also the larger 2-liter bubbling flasks on a weekly basis. The 2-liter bubbling flasks, those have air feeding into them, and they also have CO2 from downstairs. So and what that does, it helps it stay in a constantly exponential growing state, so it never fully crashes. The idea behind that is to get it as dense as possible. And then in the library and the working cultures, they can stay there for weeks at a time. But it's good to keep your working cultures, keep re-inoculating like every week or every 2 weeks at the latest, I guess. So we'll take the 2-liter flasks, the bubbling ones, after about a week. We'll take them downstairs and I'll inoculate a bag. And I'll start the bags with about 20 liters of salt water, and then I'll put 2 liters of the inoculant or the algae into there. So, and it's kind of the same principle, like it's about 10%. It doesn't have to be exact. But if you got a good, dense, exponentially growing algae, it should come up within a few days. At the most, it takes about a week for it to come up fully and be ready for harvest. From there, it's It's a matter of taking lots of samples, making sure your CO2 is at an acceptable level, because that CO2 is what's going to control your pH, and it's going to continue to make sure that your algae grows at the rate that you want. And checking the density, anywhere from 2 million cells per milliliter is a great start to harvest from. And then hopefully from there it can grow up to 6, 8, 10 million cells per mil. And it all depends on how much CO2 you have and how good the algae strain is. Ideally, once all the bags downstairs are inoculated with all the strains of algae, it's getting into harvest. So different ways you can do it. We have what's called a continuous flow or a continuous drip. So I have tubes set up so that the algae is always draining into the tubes, into what's called a harvest container at the end of the hallway. And from there we have a pump that pumps all that algae that's all together in one spot out to the oyster steam. Bada bing, bada boom, you're good.